My name is Brent McDowell,
My name is Parker Seifus.
My name is Matt Sessions.
and this is our final presentation for the China 205 class in the fall of 2013. And the question we were asked to identify or to answer is, will China be the next superpower? We have come to the conclusion that yes, they will be, for three specific reasons. First, because of their economy. Second, because of their educational system. And third is because of their rate of progress.
Our first point is China's economy. China is a driving economic force. Wherever the Chinese go, prosperity follows. Take Africa, for example. Since the Chinese have undertaken projects and agreements with various African countries, the Africans have seen growth in their own countries with more infrastructure and economic opportunity. China has created many new jobs for Africans, allowing many in the country to be able to afford necessities like shoes and clothing. The trade between the two countries has surpassed the $120 billion mark and is still climbing. China also has bolstered other economies with their investment in natural resources. China's vastly increasing middle class is requiring more and more natural resources to sustain them. Hence, they purchase oil and other natural resources in astonishing quantities from Africa and other Middle Eastern countries. This influx of money has not only shown the power of the Chinese economy, but it lifts other countries to higher economic status. Like other world superpowers, China creates economic growth with any nation they affiliate with. China's own economic growth is nothing to scoff at. Since the late 1970s, China's GDP has increased on average of 10% each year. China has the second largest economy in the world, standing at 5.8 trillion GDP. Although the GDP difference between China and the United States is still quite large, 8.6 trillion, the Chinese GDP continues to grow at rapid rates. China has also recently announced that they will be opening up a more free market economy. They also have recently allowed for more foreign companies to come onto Chinese soil and start business there. This will only improve China's economy and launch them to new economic heights.
Educational system. China has been the world's biggest exporter of students. The number of its students studying overseas has been growing at more than 20% a year. While that growth is expected to stall, most parents still acknowledge the Western educational system as superior. The students then return to China, usually replacing American workers, and apply Western principles to their business, public relations, and economics. As we all know, children are our future. And from a recent article by the Wall Street Journal, it is reported that for the second time in a row, students from Shanghai scored number one on a global educational test. The test is given to 15 to 16-year-olds from 65 different countries. Shanghai students outperform their counterparts around the world in math, reading, and science. In China, many parents have also pointed out that the intense competition the education system creates comes at a detriment of meaningful learning. Again, in Shanghai, as an example, many parents register their children for an advanced after-school program called Olympic Math. The program's best students compete in the International Mathematical Olympiad, which is a competition for high school students that China usually dominates. China is well invested in the future and heavily focuses its efforts on the education their future receives, which can only get them closer to becoming the next superpower.
Rate of progress. China has a long history, perhaps one of the longest, which gives ample room for others to look in and criticize, but the reality is, China remained much the same way for centuries. It hasn't been until recent history that they have begun to make serious changes. Of course, there have been some growing pains, but they have made remarkable improvements, such as seeking out cleaner energy resources with hydroelectric energy, allowing businesses to regulate the Chinese economy, and raising the standard of living for their citizens. We are often critical of China, but we forget that the U.S. struggled with many of the same problems that China is currently facing. The U.S. was able to overcome them and remain a superpower in the world. Take, for example, the extreme racial discrimination that took place to ethnic minorities on our own soil. Prior to the 1960s, African American men and women were hung from trees in public squares, lynched in both public and private, abused, raped, hated on, and were victims of many other heinous crimes. In addition, U.S. companies employed small children in dangerous factories and workplaces prior to child labor laws being put in place. China's treatment towards ethnic minorities, specifically the Uyghurs and Tibetans, prisoners in forced labor camps, and children working in factories are all problems that they must face, but just like the US, it is possible to become a superpower regardless of these events. The fact that these things are happening in China is unfortunate, but China has many more examples to look to for how to enact change and grow, and have done so at a much faster rate than the US. The US had many problems of their own, but that did not stop us from becoming a superpower. We don't believe it will stop China either, but the real question is how long they can remain a superpower. Will any of these problems resolve themselves, or will they be the cause of China's downfall?